In this tutorial, I'll be showing you how to use the Bloom pop-up opt-in type. Now, Bloom comes with 6 different opt-in types, and in this tutorial, we'll be going over the pop-up opt-in type. But if you'd like to learn more about the other opt-in types, we have a tutorial for each. This one is only going to be focusing on the pop-up. So just to give you an example of what the pop-up is, it's a lightbox, a modal window that is displayed over your website based on a specific user interaction. So here's an example. I'm just going to show you an example of this is a pop-up being displayed on my website based on the user interaction, which is reaching the bottom of the post. So when someone reaches the bottom of the post, a pop-up appears, and here it is. It asks them to subscribe, and that's an example of a pop-up. So to create a pop-up, you're going to want to go over to your WordPress dashboard, look for the Bloom tab, and then click on the opt-in forms link. Now, this will give you a list of all of your active opt-ins as well as your inactive opt-ins, and there's a button here that gives you the ability to create a new opt-in form. So you can you can see the example of the pop-up that I just showed you. That's what this is right here. In this case, I'm going to delete it and start from scratch and show you how I built that pop-up, so you can add one as well. Now, it's important to note that before you can add any opt-in, you first have to add an email marketing account that you can connect to that opt-in form. So you can think of Bloom as the bridge between your email marketing system and your website. So when someone subscribes using an opt-in form in Bloom, they get added to an email marketing list, and that list is being managed by that specific system. For example, some popular systems out there are MailChimp, Aweber, Constant Contact. So most likely, if you have an email list, you are using one of these marketing systems, and Bloom integrates with all the most popular marketing systems, and we're adding more and more in the future. So like I said, before you can add an opt-in form, you first have to add an account. And if you want to learn more about how to add an account, be sure to check out our accounts tutorial. And in that tutorial, I'll go over in depth how to add accounts and the specific steps needed to authorize each account and add it to Bloom. In most cases, you have to copy and paste a special API key before Bloom can integrate correctly with your account. And so to add a new account, you can go to the Accounts tab here. And here you can see a list of all the accounts I currently have added. And you can click the New Account button to add a new account. And like I said, depending on the account type you're adding, there'll be different authorization steps. But I'm not going to go into all those now. So check out that tutorial. Now, when you create an opt-in form, the first step is going to be selecting that account. And so you can either add the account in that Accounts tab or during the opt-in creation process as well. So to create a pop-up, click that New Opt-in button, and here you're going to get a list of all 6 opt-in types that Bloom currently supports. And since we're creating a pop-up, we're going to select the pop-up opt-in type, and that's going to initiate the setup process for that pop-up. So the first step is to give your pop-up a name, and in this case, I'm just going to call it pop-up. And then, like I said, you're going to select the integration, which is selecting your account type. So here's where you're going to choose, the email system you're using. In this case, I've synced my Aweber account, and so I'm going to select Aweber, and then I'm going to select my account, and I'm going to select the list that I would like these subscribers to be added to. But if you don't have any accounts added yet, you can add them during this process as well. So you can either add it in the Accounts tab, or right here you can click Add Account to add a new account, and clicking this Add Account button will bring you through the authorization steps necessary to link your account. But like I said, I'm not going to go over that right now. I'm just going to select my Aweber account and select the list that I would like people to be added to, and then I'm going to click the next button to start designing our opt-in form. And the first step in the design process, which is the second of 3 steps. So if you look on the side here, you can see kind of where you're at in the setup process of this opt-in form. The first step was the setup step. The second is the design step, and the third is the display settings. And so we're currently in the design process. And when you create a new opt-in form, when you reach the design step, the first thing you're going to see is a list of a bunch of pre-made templates that we've created for you as starting points. And in a lot of cases, these templates are going to look absolutely great on their own. So you can just kind of use these settings and be done. But we also allow you to customize every single aspect of these templates. So you can think of these templates as a starting point, and you can think of them as a kind of a collection of design settings that we've put together for you. But these decisions aren't final. They can all be changed based on the colors you want to use for your website and the fonts and all that. So, but starting out, just browse through this list and pick a starting point that looks good for you. We have a bunch of different kind of an array of colors here, some kind of just like fun variations that we've made, and this first couple rows here are just kind of some basic templates, kind of like a light template and a dark template and so on. So just pick one that looks good to you. I quite like this one, looks nice, so I'm going to select that and then move on to the customization step. So now all of these design settings are going to be filled in with values based on that pre-made template selection. So this is the design tab, and I'm going to go through each of these settings, but I'm not going to spend too much time going over everything because we have a separate tutorial about that. So if you want to learn more about the design settings and not only what they do, but how to use them effectively, go check out our design tutorial. So we have a full tutorial on that. So I'm just going to go over each of these briefly. So at any point during the design process, you can preview what you've designed by clicking this preview button. And so you can see here, it just has that pre-made template that we selected. And then as we change things, we can preview our changes. So as you scroll around, that preview button is going to follow you, and you can click that at any time to see what you've changed. First up is adjusting the opt-in title and the opt-in message. And so you can just adjust the text that appears in your opt-in form, or leave it blank if you don't want to use it at all. So you could even just have an image if you like. So in this case, if we erased both of these, then all we'd get is that image, which in some cases looks fine. So it really depends on what you're doing. So I'm going to add an opt-in title. It says, subscribe to our newsletter to get access to all of our free resources. I'm going to add a message. Okay, so once you've added your opt-in title and message, you can take a look at that. Looks good. And you can also use, we have some text formatting options here. So if you want to, say, center the text, that might look nice. So you can use these options here. Looking at that, centered looks kind of nice because the image is centered. So I'm going to stick with the centered text formatting. And then the next step is the image settings. So here you can adjust where the image appears in the box, as well as upload your own image. So if you like to change the image to something else, you can upload your own by clicking the upload image button. And you can also adjust the image orientation. So right now it's being placed above the text, but if I'd like, for example, to place it below the text, then I could do that. Or to the left or the right of the text. Next up is your load-in animation. So this is for just the image itself. When your pop-up appears, there's a secondary animation that applies to the image. And right now it's just kind of sliding up and fading in. But if we want to change that to something else, for example, a flip, we could do that. And if we preview that, you can see the image is going to kind of flip in and bounce. Looks pretty cool. I'm going to stick with that animation. Next up is the opt-in styling. So you can adjust the background color of the overall opt-in box, as well as the header font. So there's tons of font options, all these Google fonts you can choose from. You can adjust the text color. So depending on your background color, you might want to adjust the text color. You can choose between light and dark. And since right now we're using a dark background color, the light text looks good. But if you have a light background color, then dark text might look better. We have a corner style, so we can choose between square and rounded corners. So this will affect the corners of the entire opt-in box. You can see they become rounded now, which looks nice. You can add a border. So you can add a border, and once you select a border orientation, you're going to get a bunch of new border options, which is the border color and the border style. So I've selected a full border, but you can also choose to have the border only appear on a specific edge of your opt-in box. So you can have a top border, right, bottom, left, top, bottom, and left and right. And you can adjust the color as well. So I'm just going to choose kind of like a red-orange. And then you can take a preview of that. So I have this orange border. It kind of matches our button. And I've selected this kind of standard solid border style, but we have other border styles as well, such as this inlaid border, which looks nice. Or we have this is kind of fun. It's like a classic email or mail, like a striped letterhead, so which also looks fun. So, and then you can also apply this border, just on one edge. So I think this might actually look better if it's just on the top and not on the full thing. So if I change the top border, you get it just on the top, and that looks really nice. So I'm going to stick with that. Moving on to the form setup, this is where you adjust the subscribe form itself, which is, if you look at this preview again, that's the bottom part here, which includes like the input fields and the submit button. So you can adjust this area separately. You can change the background color and the orientation, all that stuff. And during the form setup process is where you adjust kind of the information itself. You can adjust the placeholder text that appears in the input fields. You can also adjust the form orientation. So right now the form is being placed on the bottom, but if I place it on the right or left, for example, we can take a look at how that looks. It gets placed on the right. And so this is purely like an aesthetic choice that you can make. And you can also choose to display the name field. So right now we're only collecting the email, but if you want to collect the person's name as well, then you can do that by selecting display name field. And then you can adjust the text that appears, the placeholder text that appears in the input fields, as well as the button text and the button text color. So you can choose light or dark, and you can change that based on the color of your button. So we have like a darker colored button, and so we're going to use light button text so it shows up nicely. Next up is the form styling, where you can adjust the colors and such of the form. So form field orientation, this decides whether or not the form fields are stacked on top of each other or whether or not they're displayed inline in a single row. So we change the inline form fields, that subscribe button. Oh, I have to switch back to bottom. So that subscribe button and the input field are going to be described going to be shown in a single row instead of stacked on top of each other as they were before. So you can make that choice. Next up, you can choose to have rounded corners or squared corners for the input fields themselves. So if I change to squared, then that subscribe and email input forms are going to be squared instead of rounded. And then you can choose the edge style. So this is the separation between the form and then your image and text. And so we have various different edge styles here. So if I change to this zigzag edge, for example, then that separation between these two areas is going to have that specific edge style. So here's where you can add some kind of personality to your form. And we have a bunch of different edge styles, a bunch of classic edge styles you can use. So if you have like kind of a more personal, fun website, you might go with this zigzag edge. If you have something more like clean and professional, maybe don't want to get too crazy, might stick with our standard edge, or maybe use the caret, which is a classic, kind of just has a little arrow that points down to the input form. So those are edge styles. And then finally we have the form footer text, which adds text below the form. And you can add like a little disclaimer about your privacy policy, for example. You can adjust the success message, which is the message that appears after someone subscribes successfully. And you can even add custom CSS. So if you're CSS savvy and you want to have some additional control over the form, you have full control here. So yeah, that's the basic overview of the design settings. And the next step, which is the last step in the opt-in creation process, are the display settings. And here you can choose both when your pop-up displays based on various triggers that are based off user interactions. And you can also choose where the form appears. So you can have it display on specific areas of your website and not display on other areas of your website. So just an example, this pop-up, let's say I only want it to display on posts. I come down here to the display setting and I just select posts. But if I want it to display on everything, or maybe just another specific post type, then I could do that as well. In this case, I'm just going to have it display everywhere. Now, in addition, you have some individual page level targetings, and you can have it display on certain pages or not display on certain pages. And if you want some more information about these display settings, we have a full tutorial that really goes into depth about not only how these display settings work, but how they can be used creatively to display different forms on different parts of your website to kind of cater to the specific users that are visiting different parts of your website. So these display settings actually can be really effective in increasing your conversion rate if you use them to target specific visitors. So in addition to being able to choose where your form appears, you can also choose when it appears. So our pop-up opt-in type, as well as our fly-in opt-in type, is a little unique in that when you first load the page, it's not there. And then it appears later on. And so the appearance of the pop-up has to be triggered by something. And so that's where triggers come in. You can actually choose how that pop-up is triggered. And so we have various triggers. And I'm going to go over each of these briefly, but we also have a separate tutorial about triggers. And in that tutorial, I go into a really great detail about how these triggers can be used effectively, again, to target different users based on their interactions. You can actually create different forms, different pop-ups that say different things, and look different, and actually sign up to different lists depending on these different triggers. So, but in general, a good trigger to have enabled might be the trigger after time delay, which means that the pop-up is going to display automatically after a certain amount of seconds. So, and when this is enabled, you can adjust the delay time. And so in this case, it's set to 20 seconds, which means that this pop-up will display automatically after the person has been on the page for 20 seconds. Or the other trigger I have selected right now is the trigger at the bottom of the post. And this means that when someone reaches the bottom of the post, the pop-up will display. So these are the two triggers we have enabled by default, but you're free to disable these if you like and enable other ones as well. And so I'm going to go over these each in detail. First, the trigger after time delay, which I already mentioned, and you can select this and adjust the delay value. So if you want this pop-up to display after 5 seconds instead of 20, or you can change that. The next step is the trigger after inactivity. This will display the pop-up after the user has become inactive for a certain amount of time. So if someone opens a new tab and they forget about your website and they've been idle for a long time, when they come back, that pop-up will be displayed if they've been idle for the idle timeout in seconds you define here. Next up is the trigger at the bottom of the post, which, like I said, will trigger the pop-up once someone's finished reading the post. This is one of the best triggers because it does a good job of targeting users when they're engaged. So they've already read your post. They've obviously enjoyed it if they've read it all the way through. So they're probably a good candidate for a subscriber. And in addition, using only this trigger won't interrupt them during the reading process because it only displays after they're finished reading. Next up is trigger after commenting, and what this does is after someone comments on your post, then the pop-up will be displayed. So you could create a unique pop-up, tailored just to your commenters and say something like, "Hey, thanks for commenting. We'd love, to hear more from you in the future. So please subscribe to our newsletter and get updates about our new blog posts." And anytime you can create a specific pop-up that is tailored to a specific user based on a specific user interaction, you're going to see a higher conversion rate. Next is the trigger after scrolling, and this allows you to initiate the pop-up when a user reaches a certain percentage down the page. So, for example, if you want the pop-up to be displayed when they go 50% down the page, you can do that, and you can adjust this setting, based on what you think would be most effective, depending on the content of that page. So if it's a really long sales page, maybe you've decided there's a certain spot down the page that you think would be kind of like an optimum time for the user to be shown that pop-up, and you can kind of play with those percentages as you see fit. Next up is the trigger after purchasing, and this is really great. This will show the visitor a pop-up only after they finish purchasing a product, which means you can create a very specific opt-in that says, for example, "Hey, sign up to our, thanks for purchasing, sign up for our newsletter and get 10% off your next purchase." And you could create a specific list in MailChimp or whatever email system you're using with a very specific welcome email that gives them that coupon. And then you could create a great autoresponder, sales autoresponder that follows up with that user and sends them testimonials and case studies, information about your new products. And here's a great example of using a trigger to target a specific user and then add them to a specific list whose goal is to change this customer into a returning customer. So That's a great example of how triggers can be very effective. And these triggers can all be used in combination as well. So you could have these all selected if you wanted. And like I said, like just starting out, having a time delay and trigger after the bottom of the post is nice. Or you might have time delay trigger after commenting or whatever. Or you might have just trigger after purchasing if this pop-up was made just for that purpose. In this case, I'm just going to have trigger after the bottom of the post enabled. And I'm going to move on. The display once per session, this is an important feature because what it does is it prevents the pop-up from being displayed more than once per session, and you can have control over that session duration. So if you have a pop-up that's being displayed on your entire website, and every time someone goes to a new page, they get that pop-up over and over and over again, every time they close it, it comes back, that can be really frustrating if that pop-up is being displayed on your entire website. So if that's the case, you might want to enable this option and then adjust the session duration. So let's say you only want that pop-up once it's closed. You don't want to come back for a full week. You could put 7 days here, and that's how that setting works. So yeah, it's a basic overview of the pop-up creation process, and I've reached the final step here, and I'm going to save, and then we can go take a look at our pop-up on the front end of our website. And now that we've created the pop-up, we can go over to our website and see what we've created. Now, we've created a pop-up, and it's going to be triggered when the visitor reaches the bottom of the post. So I'm sitting on one of my blog posts here, and when we reach the bottom, the pop-up is displayed. So there's an example of how a trigger works, and you can see that the pop-up has been designed, how we designed it during the design process. And yeah, that's a basic overview of how you create a new pop-up opt-in form. Now, I also want to show you how you can actually create different pop-ups and tailor them for specific parts of your website. So using the display settings, we can actually create different pop-ups and have them display on different pages and posts and not overlap each other. So going back to our opt-in forms panel in the Bloom settings page, we see the pop-up we created earlier, which is only to be displaying at the bottom of a post. And now we're going to duplicate this pop-up and create a new pop-up that is only displayed on pages. So Bloom makes it really easy to duplicate pop-ups, and what's great about this is that it saves you time during the design process. You don't have to go through and customize the design again. It's going to duplicate all those design settings and put them into the new opt-in form. And you can also duplicate any type of opt-in form into any other type of opt-in form. So if I wanted to duplicate this pop-up into a fly-in, then I could do that, and the fly-in would have all the same design settings as the pop-up that I duplicated. In this case, I'm just going to duplicate it into a second pop-up, and so now we have 2 different pop-ups. And I'm going to modify this new pop-up, and I'm going to have this one be a little bit different. I'm going to make this pop-up only display on pages, and I'm going to tailor the pop-up to our potential customers. So let's say I'm running a web design agency, and on my home page, I have a sales page, I have an About Us page, and on these pages are my potential customers. They're visiting my website because they might want to use my services. They're learning about our company. And if we get them to sign up on our mailing list, we probably don't want to send them, blog posts. We probably want to send them some kind of sales autoresponder, do something a little bit differently. And so I'm going to create a new pop-up and assign this pop-up to a new list. And I'm going to have it be displayed on a new part of our website, which are pages. And so heading over to our design, I'm going to change the opt-in title because this is no longer a blog opt-in form. So I'm just going to say subscribe and learn more about our company. So this would be like maybe more tailored to this potential customer. And I could change the design as well if I wanted to. I might change the image, upload a new image perhaps, change the background color maybe. I could change it to something else like maybe a nice blue. And let's give that a preview. Yep, it looks pretty good. So I'm going to go over to the display settings now. And this, like I said, this is where we can control where the pop-up appears. We already have a pop-up being displayed in our posts. And instead, I'm going to make this one display on pages and not posts. So I deselected posts and I selected pages. And I'm going to have this one trigger after a time delay. So it's going to trigger after 5 seconds. And now I'm going to save. And so we've created this second pop-up now. It's going to be displayed on posts and not pages. And then we go back to our first one and confirm that it is in fact going to be displayed on posts and not pages. So now we have two different pop-ups applying to two different post types with two different intents. And so if we go to our home page, we're going to see on our main page that first pop-up we created for a blog does not appear, but this new pop-up we created, which is triggered based on this 5-second time delay, will appear. And if we head over to our blog and scroll down, we're going to get that first pop-up, which is tailored to our blog readers, and it's being triggered at the bottom of the post. So that's an example of how you can create two different opt-in forms, two different pop-ups, use different triggers, and target it to different areas of your website to target very specific users. And that's a basic overview of creating pop-ups with Bloom.